Good morning. All right. We this is kind of coming home a little bit for us. We actually were part of this church family from '08. I mean, a really long time, '08 to 10. And then we moved in 2010 down to College Station, which I have to say, I had one friend growing up that went to or liked the Aggies, and then one friend who at ACU, an undergrad, that liked the Aggies, and they were. I'm sure there are some Aggies in here, and there's multiple levels, types of Aggies, and most of them are sold out. I mean, they're all in, sold out, and when we finally got there, we truly understood. And I was at this was when I was a sophomore, junior in college. We went up to A&M, was playing, had my one A&M buddy, and he had some A&M, some Aggies. They had tickets. I did an internship in Boulder, and they were playing the University of Colorado, so we went up there. Unfortunately, in 1994, Colorado whooped up on the Aggies. And then on the way home, on the way home, it was a great opportunity for prayer time because they did not say a word. It was a 12-hour trip, and I am not kidding. I mean, it was like bathroom, and they would just pull off, and then we'd all go inside, and then they're like, hungry. And then, you go inside. I mean, there was nothing to talk about for that day because there was a sense of intense mourning. My other one, when we first got down there, I had to, there's so many things that you look back and go, man, I wish I had the wisdom of to not do that, right? I mean, that's why we're here and that's what we learn in life. I got up there in front of, the A&M church. And this may have been like the third week there, right? And I'll do announcements. You know how do you try to join with people, right? You want to join with. And so I did this thing where I was asking Emily, and Emily and I didn't know like rules and, the regulations of being an Aggie, what you called stuff and traditions. And so a lot of ignorance coming into it. And I was like, well, what do you call people that woo? Well, you don't, right? You just do. And so that first Sunday, I'm trying to join with 1,000 Aggies, and I'm like, man, I'm gonna get this. This is my first time. I'm like, who in here are whoopers? Dad, I wish that. I mean, and of course, everybody was like, I mean, nothing, not like a real giggle, like, oh, he's so sweet type thing. I mean, nothing. And then somebody, I think, leaned up and said, did he say lookers? So that just didn't work, right? So our experience and the wisdom that we have gained, and honestly, through John Mark's dad, I mean, to this day, he continued to teach me the rules and regulations of the Aggies and what's supposed to be done, what's not supposed to be done. And we've been there 15 years, and we're still learning. Lots of rules, traditions, things you're supposed to do, not do. Which kind of leads into what we're doing today. All right, so I start with one more story, and I think this starts. Do we want to kick into? Oh, yeah.
We got it.
I forgot the little clicker.
Will it do it for me? Oh, there it goes.
So a couple of things we're going to talk through, and then I have one story to kind of get us rolling. But unspoken rules. So we're going to talk about what this means, and if you've done any kind of work on your own family. There's this thing called unspoken rules. Does that connect with the majority of you, Bex? So I'm going to use just one quick story. First Thanksgiving. And often those rules, I mean, I don't know, we might talk about some expectations prior to getting married. Some rules, unspoken rules might come to the surface, or like, why do you guys do that? That's weird. You might do that when the first. So first Thanksgiving.
So we didn't date very long.
We did not.
We didn't date very long, and 5 of the 9 months that we dated, I spent in England, and not with him. And so we had talked about everything.
Wrote letters
To each other every day.
He wrote every day.
Yeah.
I
Wrote most days.
Yes.
Yes. So we hadn't had a lot of interaction with each other's families prior to engagement and getting married.
So the first Thanksgiving, holidays have tons of unspoken rules, right? So we're sitting there on Thanksgiving Day. I think it was after the meal. We had Thanksgiving lunch. We're sitting there, and we're in the living room and around the fire. They lived in Colorado at this point, right? So there's a fire going. And I started to look around. There's the first violation is they didn't have a TV in the living room. I was like, I don't know about this. So I didn't ask about that, but that was kind of the first violation. And then they were sitting around, and this is how incredible and sweet they are. Like, I'm being real. They were sitting around, and on Thanksgiving Day, guess what they were doing? They were being thankful for each other. It was kind of strange, like in my family, we did that in different times, but on Thanksgiving Day, what are you supposed to do at like 3:00 in the afternoon? Thank you. Yeah. You're supposed to watch the Cowboys, and you kind of do a little prep time. At least that's what we did. By the way, this is my dad. So everything I'm talking about is his fault. So you won't. And it was just built in. So then let's say that the game started at 3 on that day. So about 2:30 comes around. I was getting a little fancy. Like that build up, the Cowboys, of whoever they're playing, doesn't really matter, but the Cowboys are playing. And then about 2:45, I'm just uneasy. I don't, because we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. And so I leaned over and I said,
and let's picture he's in a full coat, which none of the rest of us are, but he's in a coat sitting on the couch.
We're Colorado. It's cold because it's Thanksgiving. And there's even a fire, but they had what they call central heat, which is not on, which is a violation in itself. There are tons of violations going on.
So he leans over to me and he says, "When's the game?"
I said, "Are we going to watch the game?"
And I was like, "What game?"
So we should have talked about that, right? Yes. That was an unspoken rule. In that moment, I was like, I don't know. I'm praying we're going to make this. Right? Because that was so ingrained. That was so important, right? Because that's where we sit there as we have, it's kind of about the game, but it's about family time. It's about conversations. It's about this player and what their is like and all these types of things. So yes, it's about the game and if they win or not, kind of. But it was really about family time. And then all of a sudden, it was such a violation, such an unspoken rule that wasn't happening. And so emotionally, I'm kind of kidding, but kind of not. I was kind of antsy, and I actually found myself in the back room where the TV was, by myself watching the Dallas Cowboys. Now, that was a violation of somebody else's family views, which you're supposed to be all together, right? So then we had this idea. So that kind of opens your eyes and lets you know a little bit about what that means.
Yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit about unspoken rules this morning. And I think all these answers are in the back. So if you don't catch all the blanks, then you can come back to it later. But they're the invisible expectations, beliefs, and behaviors that shape how a family operates and how it's passed down. And they form this emotional DNA. And sometimes you don't even realize they're happening. Every family has them. And these hidden messages teach us how to stay safe, how to earn love, or keep control. So when a child is very young, in those first 2 years, you learn how to love. You cry, you're upset. Hopefully your parent attends to you and you start to develop this trust with your parent. Okay? The way that a parent does that starts to form how a child learns how to love, and they carry that with them throughout their life and into their adulthood. And so if you have a caregiver that's not very attentive, or you have a caregiver that gets upset all the time, or that becomes normal for you. And so you learn how to love way before you ever meet this person. And then what happens is if you don't if you just continue that pattern or you don't repair that pattern, then what do you think happens? You just keep doing it. You do what you know how to do, whether it's right or wrong. You just keep on doing it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And to just these messages are emotional. They're spiritual. They're physical, right? So what you do, what you don't do. They're what you eat when you all come together, right? If that's off, that's not right. So there's so many different layers that as we kind of talk about this, there's some of the surface level that that would be good to change, but then you kind of have this underneath piece, our context. So we're gonna have our content and context, right? So the things that really push what's meaningful and real for us. It's really understanding that. And that's going to be our time today, is kind of revealing possibilities for you to go and evaluate this going back to this wisdom of God's wisdom, what he wants for us, what his expectations are for us versus our own, and how to battle some of that when maybe it's conflictual with our own family, right? So we have to confront that.
Okay, here's some examples. We don't talk about hard things. That can be an unspoken rule. Stay strong and don't cry, and don't make dad mad. So when you guys come into like a marriage relationship, right? For your kids, it's really easy because they grew up alongside you, and so they see like, oh, we avoid hard conversations, or oh, we're not supposed to say that, even though we're all thinking it, we don't say that. But when you get married, Shaun had very little interaction with my family, and I had very little interaction with his family. And so all of a sudden we found ourselves in this place where it's like, oh, we have to communicate these unspoken rules, because it's like trying to play the game of basketball, which, aren't you proud about basketball? Yeah. The sports are not important in my family, but it's like playing the game of basketball. If you go out on the court and you don't know the rules, how successful are you going to be? Not very successful, right? Because you're not going to be sure what basket to shoot at. And so part of the thing when we merge our two lives and we start to realize, oh, we don't have the exact same families, which none of us do, right? Then we have to figure out, how do we communicate these unspoken rules to each other? And then what things are we going to trash and what things are we going to recycle? So you think about a trash can. What do you do with a trash can? You dump it out, right? And the garbage guy takes it away. Or now that we live out on land, you burn it, right? But you're not going to keep it. Recycle is a totally different thing. The recycle can, what are you going to do with that stuff? You're going to use it over and over and over again and try to put it to use. Well, it's the same thing with these family rules that you have. Some of them you're going to decide that I don't think that really works for our new family. And so we're going to trash those. We don't want to use those anymore. And then some of the things that we come to the table with, wow, we really like what your family or my family did, and we're going to keep recycling those. Now, the problem comes up is that when we just throw everything in the recycle bin because we're afraid to trash anything. All we're doing is recycling everything, and then we're wondering, like, why do I keep having the same problem? Why do these things keep coming up for us and our family? And it might be because you don't see that there's two bins. You're only using the recycle, and you're just like, oh yeah, we got to keep doing what we're doing. Got to keep going and going. How hard is it to trash an unspoken rule? Has anybody ever tried it before? You're going up against generations of people that say that this is the way to run your family. So to trash an unspoken rule, that takes a whole lot of intentionality and a whole lot of courage. What are some unspoken rules? Just maybe a few people throw something out. What are some unspoken rules in your family? You don't talk back. Don't talk back.
Don't talk back.
Don't talk back to who? Mama? Okay, so don't talk back there, okay?
You don't get angry.
What?
You don't get angry. Don't get angry.
Don't get angry. Don't ask why. Don't ask why. Just accept it, okay? Any other
Various tradition is like really celebrating birthday versus ignoring it. Really celebrating a holiday versus grace with the way to
Right. Yep. So you need to celebrate big. And then some families are like, oh, we'll celebrate. We just got to dinner. Maybe. Right. Yeah.
So then we kind of move in, and a lot of this is hopefully we're going to make this pretty practical, but this is something that is very in marriage and family therapy, right? This is one of the key pieces and part of the theory, but we're gonna bring it into our family. We're gonna try to use this and break this down so we can use it as families, multiple generations. So it doesn't matter where you're at, you can start with this. So first and second order change, right? So this is something we talk about and we move through in therapy a lot. So just in life, first order change, right? If you kind of imagine this is that surface level, right? So if it's, I'll often give this illustration is if somebody's an alcoholic, and a first order change is they just stop drinking alcohol, right? So if they just stop drinking alcohol, what's the long lasting possibility of change? It's pretty low, right? If it's just about, so second order change, as we're going to be talking about, is really, is altering the ultimate. As we know, there's no better example of as when we give our life to Christ, it alters everything that we do. It alters everything, every part of who we are, right? It alters how I interact with people. It alters how I love people. All those 7 things that John Mark was just talking about. We don't do that unless there is a second order change because of Jesus. That does not make sense for us, right?
So what's the difference between a first order change Christian and a second order change Christian? Throw out some things. How can you tell if somebody's just doing a first order change or a second order change?
A Sunday only Christian.
Yes, a Sunday.
On Sunday, the rest of the.
Yep. So you're showing up, you're saying the right things, you're doing the right things. Yeah.
Also, like knowing out an obligation versus a desire.
Mm-hmm. Obligation versus a desire. I like that.
and their why is different. The reasons why they do the things, it's like a Pharisee versus what he really gets it and understands that it's a change.
Mm-hmm.
Bitch.
Yeah.
You guys are doing right so much. You know, journey, man, but.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to versus I get to type thing. Like I have to go because I have to be faithful. I have to do these things versus living in the grace and mercy of Jesus that I get to, which even goes into that idea of obligation versus even pursuing, right? So am I pursuing Jesus or am I obligated to do this because I had now made this decision, which is huge difference. Yeah. Want me to do this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So we wanted to kind of give a definition, example, result. So first order change is behavior only. Adjustment that doesn't address the deeper fear or belief that's underneath, right? So that's, there's a lot of, when we're talking about wisdom, there's a lot of work that goes into this. Thank you, John Mark, for kind of walking through this, because it really is tapping into the creator of the universe is where we get our wisdom. When we release things and we deal with some of these deeper things, then we understand God's purpose for us, or his ultimate purpose for us. So example in life is a parent stops criticizing, but still believes my child's success defines my worth, right? And the result is temporary relief, pattern returns under stress, which is key. If you think about that, right? So things can, you can have some relief. The family, you know, if it's your own marriage, or if it's your own kids, your grandkids, wherever you're at, you can kind of see that when there's not a little stress, everything's okay. You can kind of function in the dysfunction, right? And then all of a sudden you have this, when the heat turned up, these things return, if it's a first order change. Second order change is deep, systemic, transformational, where these beliefs, identity, and relationships, all of that shifts, right? I always go back to Ephesians 1 when it talks about, and this goes back to, this is what Jesus had done, and all these things are a result of it. We are forgiven. We are chosen. We are adopted. All these things are transformational and come from outside of me. So instead of saying I'm done yelling, a parent says, when I feel anxious about my child's choice, I pause, pray, and remember my role is to guide, not control, right? And then a result is sustainable peace and connection. A new family narrative begins. So when the second order change happens, man, that result is what we're looking for, right?
So I see mostly kids in therapy. I see kids and in family systems. And so a lot of what I see is that you have these two parents and they know, okay, I don't like what's happening right now. But the hard and difficult part is, and they want to just bring them to therapy and like drop them off, and then like miraculously, boom, we're going to leave therapy and we're going to be fine. But that's just not the way it happens. And so what we try to do is we try to work with this father and mother and figure out like, okay, how are we going to create some first order change where you're doing something different, even if it feels awkward and it feels wrong. So you think about, if I was up here writing on the board with my right hand, which I'm right-handed, this feels very normal and I can write really well. But if all of a sudden somebody's telling me, you need to start writing with your left hand, I'm going to say, oh, okay, that's really a problem for me because I'm not very good at it. But they're like, no, if you write with your left hand and you practice, you're going to get better and better. And it's going to create a different way to do things. Okay. So then I'm going to have to be like really intentional about writing with my left hand. And I'm going to have to think about every single movement that I make. So that's what we ask people to do in therapy. We ask them to start writing with their left hand. And they're like, what? I don't want to do that. That feels wrong. And so we start with first order change. We just need you to change your behavior. That's all we need you to do, even if you don't understand it, even if you don't like it, and even if it feels awkward because it's new left-hand skills. You're just going to change the behavior, and then we're going to move into the second order change, and we're going to start trashing and figure out what we're going to trash and figure out what we're going to recycle. So when these two families, being Shaun and I, came together, the beauty of that is that we had God at the center, even though I honestly don't like football. I'll just put it out there. I do not like football. I don't like to watch it.
I need prayers.
So we go to football games together, and I really try to invite somebody that, well, I'm like hopeful that they will talk to me, because I try to think of like, I'm like, okay, what can I do in my head for like 4 or 5 hours? Because I don't understand this game. And so we had to figure out, how do we mesh, because we're so different. And you guys are probably in the same circumstance, and I'm assuming that you are even today, because we're still there. We're still trying to figure out how to mesh after, we'll be married 30 years in January. We still don't get it right, and we still have to find, okay, Shaun, Emily, how are we going to do this, right? So this is like a constant, we have to go back again over and over. Are we going to recycle this, or are we going to trash this? We're going to have to do this, and we're going to have to practice this over and over until we get to this point. You know, it's a difficult thing. So when we come into, and we have somebody that comes to therapy, the first thing we're going to do is do this, and then we're moving towards second order change. Think about if you were sitting in the therapy room with one of us, okay? Think about, and if you were going to be 100% honest about something that you need to trash in your family system. You have it in your head? You know what it is? What would be the first step? I see smiles already because you know there's things in your life that you need to do different, but you're not doing it. And you're not ready to start writing with your left hand and try a new skill. What's the thing? I'm not looking for an answer. I'm just saying bookmark it. Bookmark it and think about what is the thing that I need to change. Because I'm telling you, I see kids that are 2, I see kids that are 10, and I see these college kids and these families, and if you don't do something different, nothing different's going to happen. It's just not. You're just going to keep on recycling the same old mess. Okay? So whatever it is that you think, I need to put some effort into that and learn a new skill, do whatever you got to do to remember it later. Write it down real quick. Turn to the person next to you and tell them, do something, because it matters. It matters. And we want to talk about how it matters and the examples that we have in the Bible. And we're going to do that in the next 7 minutes.
Yes, we are.
Yes, we are.
Dan.
Okay, so we're going to start in the book of Genesis, and we're going to talk about this. So I want you to keep in mind unspoken rules, first order change, and second order change. Now we have like a basis to work with, and everybody knows what they are. Okay? All right, so we are going to turn. Yeah, I think we're going to have to flip a little bit. All right. We're going to look at Genesis chapter 12. Okay, so in Genesis chapter 12, and here's some blanks that you can fill in if you want to. We have Abraham. What would you say Abraham's fears are? What's his fear that motivates the way that he behaves?
Being old.
Getting old. Yeah. It's a good one. What? Okay. No descendants. Yeah.
Legacy.
No legacy. That's right. He's freaked out. He is freaked out. He is so freaked out that he's willing to sleep with somebody else to get a child. Right? He's willing to do that. He is motivated by fear. And the other thing that I notice when I'm looking in this is that he has a pattern in his family of deception. You ever thought about Abraham as a big liar? He's a liar. Right?
Which is interesting even right there, because Hebrews chapter 11 is considered our wife.
Oh, okay.
Right? And he is obviously mentioned, Abraham, for his faith and obedience.
Mm-hmm.
So just keep that in context of like, we're going through this, we're highlighting some pretty negative things. But again, the second order change is what we're looking for.
Yeah. So this is kind of cool. You have this fear, which creates a pattern, and then you start a family rule, and then it comes out as a behavior. Okay? So he has a fear that he's not going to have any descendants, and he's afraid of getting old, right? So then a pattern starts. What's the pattern that starts with Abraham? Huh? Lying. He starts lying about things, starts doing things that motivate, and it kind of turns into this rule. And then it's this behavior. And what happens is he passes it on to his child. So if you look in chapter 12, right? The other thing about Abram and his family is they have really pretty women in their family, right?
At least it's self-claimed.
It's self-claimed, and it seems like the people that they're around also said, like, your wives are really beautiful, right? So he goes, and they're in Egypt, and so he tells his wife, he says, you remember what he says to her? Say you're my sister. And it's like kind of true because we got the same dad, different moms, but it's not really true because we are actually married. So he says, say that you're my sister so that by doing that, everything will be okay with me. Which again, what's the other fault of Abraham? He what?
I didn't trust.
He didn't trust, and he was willing to put his wife under the bus. I was like, that, you know, when you start to read scripture, you see that God uses really flawed people. And he uses their stories in order to move his kingdom and create goodness, right? And so he tells Sarai, he says, just tell him that you're my sister, and then everything will be okay with me and nobody's going to kill me. So he does that when they go to Egypt. Now you move over later on in chapter 20, and then you've got Abraham and Abimelech. And what happens again? Same thing. Tell him you're my sister. And then he lies again. So we've got this pattern of lying. All right. Then, yeah, go ahead.
So this is kind of a side note, but it's interesting how sometimes we think end time creates wisdom, right? So there's about 24 years-ish, right, between the first time this happens and the second time this happens. And he's 75 the first time around, and 99-ish the second time around. So just put a little tag there for a second, right? So sometimes we think, in years creates wisdom. Not always.
Not always. So now we got Isaac. And I would say Isaac, one of his big fears is the fear of conflict. It seems like, as we were studying for this, we were thinking about, you've got Ishmael, right? And Isaac, who stepped in to kind of like help Isaac when Ishmael was kind of bullying him? Abraham and his mom. His mom came in and like rescued pretty good, right? And so then you see later in chapter 26, you see that people are bothering him about these wells. And he's like, oh, I'm going to move on. I'm going to move on. And he continues to move on, kind of not being able to sort of like man up and say like, this is my wife, this is my well, we're going to go ahead and stay here. And so that pattern of bullying kind of sticks with him.
Then we have Jacob, right, which is the fear of losing control, right? We go into that, and it's fascinating how there's manipulation as part of this story, there's control as part of this, deception, and right, and there's a part of us that's looking at this going, me, we're in trouble, right? So sometimes we even look at our own family. I know I don't, but look at our own family, and you go, me. There's a lot there, right? And then we have Jacob's sons, the fear of exposure, right? As the majority of us know this story, Jacob's sons, right? There's so much in this that we could spend tons of time in, but where does this eventually lead? What's the next part of this story? Joseph, right? And then what happens with Joseph, right? So he alters. It's almost like he steps into this idea of second order change, because he had all the reason in the world, I think, to be bitter, to be resentful, to say, hey, I'm going to create, right? It's our new term nowadays, which we could probably have a little, our new term nowadays is I need boundaries, which, to be real with us, sometimes we're actually talking about walls. And so we have to be careful about that. Joseph could have easily said, this is what you did to me. See ya. But that second order change happened, and he altered generations.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we have like 2 minutes left, 5 minutes left maybe. Okay, so we just want to kind of work through this again. So we'll finish up in the next session. But we've got unspoken rules. And what's an unspoken rule? Did I tell you guys I used to be a teacher? An expectation that's not discussed. There you go. Expectation is not discussed. So we got the unspoken rules. Okay? And these unspoken rules, we have a choice to trash, or we have a choice to recycle those. If we trash them, we know that's difficult, but it's possible. If we recycle them, what keeps happening? The same thing's going to just keep happening, right? So you got trash and recycle. What's first order change? Change in the behavior. So just changing behavior. And it has a purpose because we got to take a first step, right? What about second order change? Understand the why. Understanding the why. Yep. And you're willing to like take a step back and say, okay, this is what's happening. This is why this is going on. Now, am I going to choose to trash it or recycle? Okay. Isn't it funny that sometimes when you walk through, have you ever noticed this? Like when you walk through the threshold of your family home, what happens? You revert. You revert.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw Shaun under the bus. With his dad here. I'm really great. When Shaun walks through his family, through the threshold, his sarcasm level goes. Well, I'm like, what's up?
Which it's high anyway, so you can imagine.
And it's like, no, I can just see it as we get closer and closer. And it's going up, it's going up, and it's going up.
But it's really funny
It is so funny.
to us.
To y'all, it is so funny. That is something that I had to learn and to understand, because in the beginning, I really felt like that sarcasm it just feels me, because my family never did that. But what I came to learn is that sarcasm is connecting, and it connects, right? And there's a connection that happens. And when he walks through the threshold of his home, he is looking forward to the connection. He's looking forward to it, and he's coming back, and he's like remembering those memories of him and his brothers being sarcastic together. And so I would encourage you as a couple or as a family, you know, if you have children in your home or maybe talking with your adult children, it's never too late to start to talk about the unspoken rules and to start thinking about, you know what, maybe we need to trash something. Or maybe this is really good. Let's talk about what we want to keep. And start trying to like understand the context of what the person that you're walking alongside in your life, like what motivates them. Start to understand their context. Because one choice that I could have is to say, Shaun, stop being sarcastic. It bothers me. Stop doing that. But is that very loving to my spouse? No, it's really not. Because I don't want him to do that to me with my family's rules either. Right? And so we had to learn how to like mesh together and figure out, okay, how can I understand and appreciate this? And then how can you understand and appreciate the things that I bring to the table?
Because it would have been, weird if I would have said, yeah, quit being so thankful on Thanksgiving. You know, that's just kind of nice, right? And so,
Yeah.
but I think part of it is when you, as you confront these, like talking about it is the first step. You know, when somebody comes in and you might meet with mentors, you might meet with friends, and when you share some of the things that have been around or inside of you for a long time, and this is what we have the privilege and honor in therapy, is when they share that for the first time, when they begin to explore that, it begins to release these things that feel like it's been tied down and you can't touch that. But when you just take the step to get that out and begin to talk about that, there's power in that, right? There's power in that. I mean, it's kind of that idea of confession, right? Just releasing these things that have had a tie on you. If it's on my own brokenness and sin, or if it's things that I just need to get out and go, is this normal? Is this right? Do I want to keep it? Do I want to trash it? Recycle it? And that's the power of starting this process. We know that you're not going to jump into second order changes today. But it's a process that's part of the wisdom piece, understanding the generations, right? That didn't start with them. I mean, you're talking about Adam and Eve. When God said, "Where are you?"
Well, what'd they do? That's alive.
So
Right?
So just a reminder, she read that, started that process in this first and second order change.
Okay, so we're going to come back in the second session, and we're going to continue this story and talking about practical ways that you can start to trash and recycle, recognize these unspoken rules, and move into the second order change.
Okay. Pray, and we'll
Father, I just pray, first of all, just
thank you for Jesus, the perfect plan of your son Jesus coming to this earth, showing us how to love each other, how to be so committed and dedicated to you, God, and that you are the source. God, you are our God. And following that, knowing your commitment, knowing what we needed in our sin and brokenness and how to restore is through the blood of your son, Jesus. Through the power of the resurrection, Romans 6 says we have new life. We were buried with your son, Jesus, and raised in new life. God, we pray over these things that we've talked about today. Wherever, I just pray that you would just bless every single individual here, couple, family that's represented as we go and we start these conversations. It's in Jesus we pray. Amen. Thank you, guys.